Okay, John. So I suggest we go on to we're on to chapter 3. Is that, and then especially some of your figures will be good as well.
Sure. Yeah.
And the tables that we didn't have a chance to go over the tables, but just one question, one point on the tables. You start, the top of the table is more basic, and then you go down to larger overarching quantities at the bottom. Is that right?
Yes. You see authority roles start with personal authority, then it goes to a group, which is a multiplicity of individuals, then spiritual or universal, which is the group of all groups. These terms become more abstract, and then humanitarian, which is a universal set over all time, and then the transcendental just transcends all of that sense of concreteness and just looks at pure transcendentals, as Aristotle and Plato were talking about. Pure, equality, love, and peace. Those are transcendentals. I mean, they transcend any kind of application that we try and pin them down to. So,
okay, so that's the general hierarchy of the figure tables. Okay, so do you want to run us quickly through?
Let's go up to 3 starts
3?
right there. Yeah, chapter 3.
Page
3.1 is the history of group authority, and see, I talk about how group or tribal authority started. Let's scroll down and give them a page number here too. Also
57.
Page 57. So I like to use examples and examples from history and leading all the way up to modern age. I talk about like I said, group authority is one that we're really the most into more. Besides, all our personal relationships, we're all in all kinds of different groups: work, family. Like I said, the internet, Facebook. Like we were talking about. So these are all examples of group. And animals have right here. They have a simple pecking order. The one leader fights to the top, and everybody's jockeying, and when the leader finally gets weak, a younger one takes its place. But that's not the group authority I'm talking about. The group authority is people by their assent. They elect a leader, and that's a lot more stable situation. You don't see these radical takeovers and inter-tribe conflict. Like I said, in the United States, you got a peaceful transition every 4 years to another president, but then in dictatorships, it's like I said, the tragic case of Gaddafi and some of the other leaders that, Saddam Hussein, So, like I said, I think the progress is towards getting the people more involved in the group, and not so much dictators. Not so much dictators, but even monarchs. I mean, I know a lot of the monarchs now are just figureheads, and that's a good development. Nobody should have complete control over a country. I can see because absolute power corrupts absolutely. Is what the famous saying is, and so hopefully, like I said, Kim can North Korea can really take socialism into the modern era like China did. I mean, everybody, all the people in China, I can't say all, but they're all living a lot better, I would say. And And I'm hoping that he could do that with his people too. And if he gets into the global community, then all the benefits come, all the imports and the exports and all this restrictions are off. So that's what my solution is on this. This whole chapter is devoted to, here I talk about the cardinal virtues, and this is the utilitarianist approach, consequentialism, prudence, justice, temperance, and fortitude. And there's a long history of the cardinal virtues, going back to Plato and his idea of an ideal Greek city-state. That's before Greece was unified under Alexander the Great. But scrolling down here, the group, I talk about the group authority is susceptible to the follow maneuver. That's one of the questions about how the follower has to balance with the leader and vice versa there. And so going down to page 61 here, I talk about the strike option, and I'm not saying we should. Here's the part I was talking about the positive part of the follower, the group cohesiveness. Cartwright and Xander, they identified 5 attractive forces within the successful group. Identified as a strong feeling of we-ness rather than I-ness. Okay, that's getting away from the ego and getting into what's best for the group. Friendliness and loyalty to fellow members. Collective work towards a common goal. That's number 3. Willingness to endure pain or frustration for the sake of the group. So that gets into the negative reinforcement, where there's times when things do go wrong. And then a common defense against criticism. And I'm sure they say that this is not all inclusive. There's other ways, but members are attracted to a group more likely to exhibit congruent attitudes, namely responsible action, interpersonal harmony, and similarity of values and emphasis on security within the group. And we see that in a national sense in nation states where people are going to be patriotic and defend their nation and everything, and there's nothing but positive can come out of that. So here we talk about the prudence, justice, temperance, and fortitude, and they build on the alter ego states. So here I talk about 3.3 classical traditions for the cardinal virtues. And these go back, like I said, 478 BC, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, and then the Roman Empire, they adapted a lot of those, and they gave them the modern names there in the yellow down here. Prudentia, Justitia, Temperantus, Fortitutio. And that's how they entered into the Christian tradition. But they're also listed, they are as a grouping in the Old Testament. Wisdom of Solomon. So that's gives the Jewish traditions, and also very, very prominent in the Islamic tradition. Boy, there's commentaries by I forget his name now, but very, very, very prominent, and they celebrate all the same virtues, more or less across the board here. But here we go. Here, bottom of page 63. Prudence represents the group analog of approval, whereas justice denotes like a refinement of blameful leniency. Furthermore, temperance adds a public sense of moderation to aspiration. So not only are you aspiring for yourself, you're you're temperate as far as the group, how others look at you. Are you a showboat, or are you someone that can live moderately and do what's best for the group? And fortitude. Fortitude is a synonym for bravery or courage, and that's a more advanced form of compliance here. So, especially like in the military context there. So here I talk about how these relate to the past, the present and the future-based model of the conditioning interaction. Let's keep scrolling here. This is I've talked about all this pretty much. Okay, then I talk about the individual interactions. First, 3.4 is glory, and then prudence, and then scroll down here further to we talk about the origins of glory here, prudence, and then the second stage where the reinforcement becomes in the active state, dignity, temperance. Okay, I dignifiedly act desirously towards you in anticipation of your temperate treatment of me. Or using the accessory terms, I would, you respectfully act passionately towards me. And then, so you can get all the perspectives that need to lead to complete empathic understanding. Here down below, towards the bottom of the page, I talk about dignity, and from the Latin dignitas. These are all real prominent themes in the rhetoric of the Roman states persons and everything. So let's scroll down. So we're entering into our last couple hours here, so we maybe have to speed up a little bit there. We'll scroll down to okay, here we go to the negative reinforcement aspect of it. 3.6, section 3.6 on 71, page 71. Said in addition to positive reinforcement, you got the negative. Where submissive types of behaviors lead to a lenient response. So if I honorably act submissively towards you, I would expect a leniently just treatment from you. And you see that in the wolf pack, where the submissive pack member gets on his back and exposes his throat, which would lead to certain death, but that's a cue to the leader to, hey, let's bring it back to positive, So, and then on the next page I talk about the general and his enlisted men, and how this dynamic occurs, how the tradition for honor, and then it's around 73, and then 74, we go into integrity and fortitude, the flip side, where the march of time brings worrisome sense of integrity into the present, in anticipation of a brave compliance on the part of the enlisted men. So this really has applications in all different spheres, of society, the military, economy. Economy is more the positive reinforcement, whereas avoiding conflict, that's the negative reinforcement. So let's kind of go down to the next chapter, chapter 4. Like I said, I devote a separate chapter to each level. This is spiritual, universal realm. Universal if you're a secularist. Spiritual if you believe in all-encompassing kind of scriptural interpretation. Here I talk about the ancient Egypt, how their religion kind of rose to. Egypt had a lot of different cultures coming in, and they were attracted to the real wealth of the Egypt. So the Pharaoh had to bring them all in line with like a universal perspective, a universal power, and the people that came, they were expected to fall in line, with the spiritual mandates and universal mandates of the Pharaoh, and the priesthood class figured more or less equally in that thing. And then let's scroll down some more. So these are just examples that I bring for, like I said, the spiritual level. I talk about the Christian tradition, where Christ made a claim to the role of Messiah, and then that's where he eventually, after the fact, he was declared divine by the councils. The Roman Emperor Constantine, he wanted a real religion, so Christ was made the Son of God by decree, and or so they say. I mean, who can trust history nowadays? Much less back then. Christ did use the spiritual authority maneuver. He said, render unto Caesar what's Caesar's, and render unto God what's the God. That's the original separation of church and state right there. So let's scroll down here and get the modern perspectives. I talk about the founding of the United States and how the Declaration of Independence was really kind of a spiritual or universal doctrine, where all men are created equal with certain inalienable rights, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. That's directly related to my class of civil liberties. Providence, liberty. Let's scroll down here, get to those. Okay, here's the motivational interplay. So we see for the theological virtues, faith is a higher form of prudence. Hope works on justice. Temperate charitableness, and decent fortitude. So we can kind of see the abstraction going up at this universal level, in both terms of positive and negative reinforcement, and the negative reinforcement also. So it looks like we're about halfway through. Let's kind of fly through these chapters here. On here I talk about the individual section on page 86, section 4-5. Talk about the interplay of providence and faith. And then give some background there and examples, and then scrolling down to the flip side of that, which is civility, charity, 4-6. And give examples, some religious examples, and also about civil liberties and charitableness. I bring up Mother Teresa and all her good works, and then 4-7, we have Liberty, Hope. What page is that one on? Let's see. Liberty, Hope.
95.
Oh, 95, yeah. And it's the same kind of strategy. Just bring out the examples and show why these terms should be listed at this level of the hierarchy. And then we got the flip side there, page 4-8, austerity and decency, where the two-stage dynamic culminates. And okay, that's good. Then we're going on chapter 5 here, the humanitarian, which you see a highlighted here, speaks for all generations of mankind, not just the current one. That's section 5.1 here on page 105. And then here it gets really interesting. Like I said, this is these are themes of real humanitarian significance. We get the classical Greek values even here. I mean, some people say those are the highest you can go, but really, but I show that you can go even to the humanistic level, and so here we got the motivational interplay. 5.3 on page 109 near the bottom. It's we show how the classical Greek values build. Beauty is a higher form of faith. Hope is, then you have the just hope for the truth. Truth enters in there. I mean, everybody wants to know the truth. But for me, it's just one term in my specialized system here. There's a broader sense, sure. But what the system does is it constricts down and makes things more precise here. Then you charitable goodness, and like I said, goodness is also a very broad theme in ethics, but you can show it's just related to positive and decent wisdom. Wisdom is a lot of research on wisdom research and stuff. So yeah, on 5.4 I show the interplay of grace, beauty, and now it's getting so abstract that the behavioral undertones are not as obvious, but you can, if you really think about it and see the examples, you can see how then it turns into magnanimity and goodness, the interplay. On page 114, then we'll scroll down to the negative reinforcement here. Got free will truth. As I said, it's getting really abstract here. And then equanimity wisdom on page 119. We're breezing through now, but said we want to go on to chapter 6 here, and then heading 6.1. That's the history of the transcendental perspective, and we talk about the classical traditions and Kant and New England transcendentalists on the next page. And then the modern day revival of transcendentalism, where in the 70s you had the peace-love generation, and they also talked about equality, also peace, love, tranquility, equality. That's the big grouping there. And that's the highest authority level, the transcendental. This can show this has really a lot of precedence in the past. So going from page 124, I take a different tact because they're so abstract. I just deal with each one individually. Peace, 6.3. In 6.4, I go to love, and there's a lot of tradition there. And then 6.5 is tranquility, and then finally going down to equality here. And the ideas of the Enlightenment thinkers mostly really made the big inroads here on equality and everything. And then we talk about the United Nations Declaration of Rights there, where all beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. So this just unifies all three of the terms from my system into one cogent statement there, one that's going to live for all time. And then we get to the mystical values, which is the follower role in response on page 1, on the bottom of page 131 there, 6.7, and then some of this has to do with a lot of the contributions from William James. In fact, I borrowed his mystical values from one of his chapters. You know, he was way ahead of his time there, and so he experimented with the mystical tradition. Then I talk about mystics in the Christian tradition, the saints like Teresa Avila, how they had divine mystical experiences, and then so I deal with these separately here too. Ecstasy, Bliss is 6.11, then joy is 6.12, and harmony is 6.13. And I try and give as many examples as I can. And then, like I said previously, at 6.14, the mystical values are the highest nameable range because they all seem to kind of blend in meaning, pretty almost, so they're hard to distinguish. And there's no upper limit to the meta perspective. So this could even get into a supernatural type of authority, and who knows what that's like. I don't think I've really had experience of that, but there's maybe others out there that have. I'd be interested in hearing any feedback. So that's the frontier of my system. You know, we should always work on the frontier. So, and then this chapter 7, I devoted this to the accessory versions, which enable empathy, 7.1, empathic principles, and I have a diagram in here which I show, which I previously only introduced, but here's the accessory virtuous hierarchy in a compact form. Let's back up here and just kind of look at this. This should really stand out in the camera here. Like I said, these are all variations of the major virtues. They're not as commonly used or cited, traditionally cited, but like I said, we could put these in the schematic definitions and show how.
Maybe you read through the whole list, please.
Well, let's go down. We'll go down to the full page diagram here. This will.
On which page?
Right there. It starts right there.
145.
Yeah, they're bold, so they should kind of stand out. These are the. Like I said, it's the same format. Personal authority, personal follower. See, when you see these arrows, see this. This is where how you rise to the next higher level. And you get the group, and then it goes into the group follower over here at the next level. Let's scroll down a little more. There's the group, see, jumping out. Then the arrow goes down here to the spiritual, or I like to call it universal because I think I'm more of a secularist at heart. But,
can you read the values because they can't see this?
Okay, for spiritual authority, that's I got bountifulness, freedom, courtesy, and forbearance, which are the analogs of grace, free will, magnanimity, and equanimity. You can see how they're somehow they're related. Like I said, the English language is always changing, and words change their meaning and stuff, but these are the best entries that I could come up with at the time. And like I say, I welcome anybody that says, I have a better, if you come familiar with the system, and I have a better term that could go in there, I would be all ears. Like I said, I would give credit to anybody that can improve on the system. Because, like I said, it is so complex, and even though I almost had to read the whole dictionary to find all these terms. Here we got spiritual disciple, we got devotion, fairness, kindness, scruples. Scrupulousness is a form of decency, kindness is a form of charity, or analog, so to speak, and that's how we communicate. we like one of the questions said, I need to make a distinction here from one of the questions where this is how we label the emotions. This is how we communicate about them. But we experience these. We're always experiencing emotions at all time. Sometimes we don't even know the label. We're just interacting with people. But like I said, this is a way to add precision, and like I said, maybe program it into a computer, or that's how we communicate with each other. As language evolved, if there's a need to express something, there's a word that comes into play, or they borrow it from another language tradition. Like English is a real hodgepodge of words that borrowed that serve the purpose, for communicating these higher meanings here. So let's scroll down to humanitarian. You can see these are getting more abstract now. Humanitarian, blessings, conscience, graciousness, patience. And like I said, I have later in this chapter, I give a little background on each of these and actually show why they're assigned their specific slots. Although, like I said, there's always room for improvement here. So let's go down to the transcendental level here at the bottom of the page. Got the humanistic values. Serenity is a counterpart of tranquility. Affection is a subjective form of love. Amity is an analog of peace, and accordance is an analog of harmony. So, like I said, I went through a lot of deliberation on these, and I think this is close to the final form. So, let's scan down here. That was figure 7A, the accessory versions of the virtues. So we're going to page 146. Here's where I promised I look at each of the accessory virtues and give a little paragraph. And 7.3, 7.4, this goes all the way up to like 7.19 here.
Can you wait a minute?
Ambition, 7.4, exaltation is a form of glory. 7.5, bountifulness, which is a form of providence. 7.6, blessings, which is a form of grace. Serenity is tranquility. 7.5. 7.8, admiration. 7.9, circumspection, which is a form of prudence. 7.10, devotion, form of faith. 7.11, yeah, it makes me thirsty. Charm is a form of beauty. 7.12, rapture, form of ecstasy. And then for the negative reinforcement, I didn't really expand on that much. I couldn't find too many interesting examples. So I scroll down here. Here's the compact table here, and you can see the progression here: deference, uprightness. Freedom is a form of liberty. Conscientiousness is a form of free will. And then on the other side, equity is justice, fairness, and credence. So see, not all of these are really precise matches, but for the sake of the overall system, I incorporate them, and it makes sense here. So. Let's scroll down again to back out. Well, here's the other versions here of the reinforcement. Passion, form of desire. 7.15, respect, passion, dignity. 7.16, courtesy is a form of civility. You can see that these are right on. Graciousness is a form of grace. 7.17, 7.18, affection equates with love. And then on the follower roles, we got consideration, 719's 720 is continence, which is an old-fashioned term for temperance, or bridling of the passions. Continence, kindness. 721 is a great form of charitableness and benevolence. 722 is a form of goodness. Goodness. You're benevolent, you're a good person, you know. I mean, this is just simple back and forth here. We'll scroll down to the final one here, gladness. I put it as a form of, joy, gladness, yeah. And so then also you got I got a table here on for the negative reinforcement here. Let's scroll down to that table and I'll explain that. There it is, the compact table there. Yeah. So you see the progression again. Apprehension, probity, forbearance, patience, amity. And then you got bravery, scrupulousness, shrewdness, form of wisdom. Scrupulousness is decency, and accordance is a form of harmony, you know. Not a form, I mean it's just a different perspective on looking at these concepts. So that should kind of close out this chapter. Let's kind of keep strolling down there. Oh, and then we can do can fit all those in a schematic definition format. Just like here we got the table. I can see that it's got the same kind of organization as the main virtues. And you can see the dynamics. This is really amenable to programming into a higher order kind of, like even a computer system. There we go. Let me read one of these off to you. How about exaltation? Let's scroll down just a little bit. So, previously, I, as your personal follower, have rewardingly acted admiringly towards you. So you can see this. It's more subjective in there than in response to your ambitious treatment of me. But now, you as group authority will ambitiously act in an exalted fashion, kind of a takeoff on the glory perspective, towards me in anticipation of my admiring treatment of you. And so, like I said, some of these can be confusing, but when you look at how they fit in the overall scheme of things, you know, this should be, it's hard to argue that this could have arisen solely by coincidence or accident because like I said, the language evolves to meet a need, and these are concepts that have been labeled as main and accessory. So wow, 18 people. Wow. So that basically more or less wraps out that previous chapter, chapter 7.
Okay.
We go up to
I'm going to
11.
try with a video just as you go through the table and see if I'll put the Skype group on video so they can see your video maybe now. Yes, you go through. So this is you did table B1. Can you talk about table B2 in detail, for example?
Well, we said it's a 4-hour class, right? I mean,
Yep, it's fine. Keep going. So,
okay, well, this deals with the negative reinforcement. We talk about here in response to aversive types of behavior, submissiveness. So let's scroll down to one that's a little more abstract. We talked about the personal. Let's look at freedom here. Previously, this table B2, previously I as group representative have equitably acted with concern towards you. in response to your deferential sense of uprightness. So that's like honorable sense of submissiveness on the part of it. But now you, as spiritual authority, will freely act in upright fashion. This gets into this universal realm of universal freedom and liberty and all that towards me. So this is a power acceleration and power towards me in anticipation of my equitable sense of concern. And notice here that the term on the top, this underline, is introduced in the second part of the definition. The freely in here. They're modified to some degree to fit into a sentence format. But that's it. That's the same thing. As you go down, you can see the abstraction go on and on. And so let's go on to table B3. This returns back to positive reinforcement now. And you got the passionate respectfulness, courteous respectfulness. Then here you got the gracious sense of courtesy. This comes right out of the definitions. A gracious sense of affectionateness. So I think the case, I make a strong case. I'd be willing to hear any objections, because I'm really invested in making this the best possible system for convincing the world population, not just the English speaking, but around the world. Everybody can benefit from this. So let's go down to B4, table B4 on page 159. And these, you see the same hierarchy then. You got probity instead of integrity. And you got forbearance. And then patience, amity. I see this. Amity is a form of peace, and accordance is an accessory form of harmony. And this, they could go even further beyond this table of definitions, but like I said, this is the highest nameable range of terms. So let's kind of breeze through here to the. This I give form a model of communication between myself and the other. And yeah, let's back it out a little bit more. Yeah. Anyway, like I said, it's in the paper. It's a kind of an overview on how the main and accessory terms interact there. And so finally, chapter 8, I go on 8.1 to general unifying themes. And this adds an extra layer of validation to the system, because every grouping of terms has a individual philosophical theme associated. For example, the theme of utilitarianism, which I mentioned, encompasses the collective group focus comprising the cardinal virtues: prudence, justice, temperance, and fortitude. And like I said, in the Greek city-state, everybody, utilitarianism is the greatest good for the greatest number. Okay, and that's accomplished through the cardinal virtues, where you would get a smooth running society. And the utilitarianism builds on pragmatism, which is more what's practical to the individual. See, and then we also have the themes related to the authority roles, which starts with individualism, which kind of unifies the ego states and basic focus, and then personalism, the charisma, the group authority, and then spiritual theme is romanticism. The romanticism that was developed in the Age of Enlightenment, where larger than life themes and all that. And then the remaining humanitarian transcendental, you get into ecumenism, which is like an ongoing, long tradition, and also the humanistic, peace, love, tranquility, equality. So here we, and then here the following terms highlighted in yellow. We got the sequence of pragmatism, utilitarianism for the group, ecclesiasticism, which is the kind of the code of the congregation, the spiritual congregation, the group of followers. And then you got eclecticism. What is the best of all traditions, and in fact, this is this whole system of themes is eclectic. So I'm pulling them out from all, each of these has their own kind of philosophical traditions, like utilitarianism. Maybe a lot of you know it as consequentialism. It's, as opposed to deontological, which is a more strict, immediate type of ethical code, and that relates to the active roles of the authority figure. Okay, like I was telling you about, based in individualism, personalism. Those are so. These themes finally solve the long-standing debate on how to merge deontological ethics with consequentialist ethics. I mean, they show that right here. They're just basically two sides of the same coin. One's related to immediately active conduct, and one's what's appropriate within a future time frame. And that's why they're called virtues, because it's what's expected of you, not what's actively. It's a potentiality, so to speak. So let's. Okay, here I got in a table here. You got these are big enough to see. I would say. Like I said, I talked about individualism, personalism, romanticism, ecumenism, humanism. And then on the right side, the follower roles, pragmatism, utilitarianism, ecclesiasticism, eclecticism, mysticism. And so, I got the 3-digit. These are even coded within the system in their own numerical codes. So let's scroll down to. In section 8.2, I start to define each of these terms, give them a short paragraph and why I think it should be inserted there. And then we even got the accessory versions of these things. So, like I said, that's another layer. You can't leave out. You got a subjective and an objective view of these. And these are not very commonly used words, some of these. But they, just like with the virtues, you got the main terms, but these can even be put into the schematic definition format, so that we'll see that these, even though some of these are not commonly used, they do prove valuable, and if anybody can find a better choice, I would definitely be interested in hearing about it. So let's scroll down to...
Just read the title.
Quintessentialism is a form of individualism. Expediency is kind of like a form of pragmatism. Heroism equates with personalism. Practicality is utilitarianism, the greatest good. Charisma, orthodoxy, some of these higher ones are a little bit maybe a stretch, but like I said, maybe it's from lack of enough research on this.
What does evangelism mean?
Evangelism is the accessory counterpart of ecumenism. Okay, you're ecumenical, you're proselytizing kind of, and evangelism is the same thing, in the spiritual sense. There should be some kind of secular version of this. Like I said, language is not perfect. There's not always a word. There's not always a word that corresponds to what will be predicted here. And but when you see the big picture, you know that even if you have a less than ideal correspondence, you know, like I said, it's not the fault of the system. It's just the fault of the dictionary, so to speak. Sorry, Webster. Okay, let's move on here. I bet we got a lot more questions here. Let's scroll down to here. Like I say, I interrupted shortly. You can do this reading at your own leisure as far as all the backgrounds. Some of these examples are very interesting in the history and all that. Scroll down to here, ecclesiasticism, eclecticism, mysticism. And then I talk about the schematic definitions here. Here they are. Even something as abstract as these themes, you can get a reasonable, sensible schematic definition. Okay, I will actively behave in an individualistic fashion towards you, in anticipation of your reinforcement of me. And then it goes next higher level. You as my personal follower, and I'll potentially act in a pragmatic fashion towards me, overruling my individualistic treatment. So you see the authority and followers go back and forth. So we go now personally. I showed the trend there. This is these need to be studied more than just glossed over. I mean, to really get the nuances of these definitions, but they're extremely valuable for the point that I'm going to bring up next in this chapter. Scrolling down, and see these are the accessory versions of these. These even work in the definition format. Not quite as neatly as the main ones, because we're more familiar with those. But we'll get beyond it. I want to get to where I talk about the perennial philosophy, which is really the main theme I'm trying to get out of this chapter here. E13, I talk about the accessory virtuous themes. These are in also the compact table down below. That's the same as the larger diagram, but it shows the trends without all the intervening word authority rules. And so, got quintessentialism. Go to a group. You go to heroism, then charisma. As a counterpart of like romanticism. Evangelism, like I said, was ecumenism, and then cosmopolitanism. I had to pick that term for the humanistic. The transcendental. So, maybe there's not enough shades of meaning, but this is the form of humanism, kind of. Cosmology. That's why I picked it. Cosmology, because it's just totally transcendent. And if you look up this definition, you might see that it fits right in there. It's per se on this other side here. Expediency, practicality, which is pragmatism, utilitarianism, Ecclesiasticism, I put orthodoxy, which might not be the best one, but like I said, the system stands alone, apart from any, the themes are just really the extra degree of validation. Let's scroll down to where it says, talk about perennial philosophy here, because that's it's been a big theme in philosophy. Here we go. This enduring philosophical focus is highly reminiscent of the seminal concept of the perennial philosophy. Any of you have perennial plants? No, they come up year after year. I mean, they're timeless here. And this is perennial philosophy, an eclectic system of thought that incorporates the best conceptual concepts from the broad range of philosophical schools that have flourished throughout the ages. And I propose here that current master system of themes is really the most radically complete perennial philosophies to date. I mean, there's a lot of people that have tried, but never to the degree of precision of a 10-level hierarchy and authority and follower roles that it's included in this. And that's just really one of the most proud things about my system that I really appreciate being able to develop here. Let's scroll down so I can continue reading. Page 182 on the top. So yeah, just each in fact, the theme of eclecticism is really the spirit of this perennial philosophy, because you can use these themes also. The individual virtues and values are nice, but they're kind of limited to one mode of communication, where these are more like for policy making and higher order planning, especially the humanitarian and the transcendental ones. I mean, like I said, humanistic is the highest, really, and that's really most humanists are kind of secularists, and even though the religions use the same terms and everything, so that's one way to bring everything together. The secularists and even allow, like I said, character education to occur in schools, give our new generations a fighting chance, to become the people they were born to be. So, and then this chapter 9, it's just another little sidelight that I developed called the 9.1, the Phantom and Fantasy Dialogues. And I noticed that my whole system was with two people that are interacting, but sometimes one party is absent, so you have the phantom dialogue, where the monologue in a verbal sense, or letter writing, like in a printed mode, where you take you try and communicate to the other person, and you kind of fill in their roles, how they would react and everything. And that's what I term the phantom dialogue. And then the fantasy dialogue is where both parties are not there. I mean, it's the realm of pure fiction, where the writer's there's still a mind there, the writer's still writing the fiction, but it's just divorced from any really sense of concreteness. It's pure imagination and everything. And then I show a number of literary traditions here to back this up. Figures 9A and 9B coming up here. Okay, here's the phantom roles. You got the pledge, the proclamation on this side. You got the grant and the charter on this side. These are all literary devices. And then you got the edict leading to the testament over here, and then sanction and the chronicle. These are not all really commonly used words, but like I said, they're all literary devices, and like I said, they're so abstract really that there is no, I haven't been able to determine any transcendental level. It's just four. It stops at the humanitarian, because like I said, they're already phantom and fantasy anyway, and so they're not. But if somebody has ideas on what could be down here, I'd be very interested in hearing that. I know my limitations, but maybe there's some real geniuses out there that can extend the frontiers here, you know. So let's scroll down to figure 9B. Okay, here's the fantasies, and these are the real literary devices here. You got personal level, you got the myth and the fable, and then the group, you got the legend, and spiritual here, down here, you got the parable. It's used, kind of obliquely gives a message here. And then on the follower side, you got the analogs of the pragmatism and the utilitarianism, rhetoric, propaganda, prophecy, utopianism, as well as allegory. This, I said this is a work in progress, but in fact, these are so abstract, I don't have any accessory versions for these. That would be just a real stretch. But they potentially they could be something. Somebody that's really familiar with literature could probably throw something together, make accessory versions. But these are so abstract too. I tried to make a table of definitions using these, but it's really pretty confusing. You have to really study it, you know. But it would be feasible, but I didn't want to put it in my dissertation here. So let's scroll down a little more. And, yeah, I basically examine each of those entries in the tables, and like I said, I talk more about the specifics of the phantom dialogue here. 9.2. And then 9.3, I start giving individual little blurbs on each, the pledge. 9.4, the proclamation. 9.5, the edict. And 9.6 is the testament, which you know is kind of a humanitarian flavor to it. And then the follower roles, you got 9.7, the grant, which is the same as pragmatism. The charter is 9.8, the kind of utilitarianism counterpart, the charter, the sanction, 9.9, the chronicle, 9.10. Now, chronicle, that's really, talk about the Viking sagas, medieval chronicles, that's prototypical humanitarian. So you can really see the fit on these. And then here I talk generally about fiction and what I call the fantasy dialogue. I like to call it that because the phantom and fantasy, they both begin with that hard F, and it makes it easy to remember, you know. But let's scroll down there. You got 9.12, the fable, 9.13, the legend, 9.14, the parable. Talk about Jesus, how he gave parables. 9.15, allegory, and then follower roles are 9.6, rhetoric. 9.17, propaganda. I know propaganda gets a lot of bad press at times, you know, when it's abused, but it just means, you know, that it's just a political kind of fiction, really, you know. I mean, it doesn't have to have a basis of fact to make its point across. Prophecy in the spiritual realm, 9.18, and then utopianism, 9.19. There's never really been a utopian society, but you know, if you can imagine it, it can be done here. So I got hope that. And then we want to talk about the virtuous attributes for these. Scroll down, yeah. Okay, chapter 10. Yeah, okay, we're finally into the wrap-up phase here. I try and draw it all together and show the brief history of ethical inquiry. There's really about 4 traditions. Like I said, the Christian ethics, there's a golden rule, but the golden rule appears in the scriptures of all religions. I mean, they did a survey. Do unto others as you would have others do unto you. I mean, that's, if you have nothing else, that's one you should fall back on. And then that's a contrast. Let's scroll down to the iron rule. It is apply iron, you know. Do unto others before they can do unto you. It's just the philosophy of selfishness. Like I said, many dictators, they only care about keeping themselves in power. You could even apply that to some of the U.S. Congress people, you know. They get into office and right away they start fundraising for their next re-election, you know. That's why they're pressing for term limits now, so they can work for the people. Not to say that Congress is bad, but like I said,
it's a universal phenomenon.
Yeah, if you get absolute power, it corrupts you absolutely through lobbyists and doing favors and the whole swamp kind of phenomenon. But don't get me started on that. Let's go down to there's a hybrid of these rules. It's called the sober rule, and it says, "Do not do unto others what you would not have them do unto you," which means I leave you alone, you leave me alone. I don't necessarily have to be going out of my way to be accommodating to you like the golden rule. I mean, I admire the people that do that, but generally I think the secular population, they just try to leave well enough alone, you know. And that's, I talk about how Gandhi used nonviolent resistance and Martin Luther King, nonviolent strategy of civil disobedience. That is the sober rule. But the sober rule here on the last, before 10.2, the sober rule can prove ineffective under such ideal circumstances, just as easily be exploited, particularly when one's oppressors remain unmoved to such a stirring appeal to conscience. So Gandhi was able to make the British feel guilty, and they got out of India, and Martin Luther King made the U.S. government make changes, you know, through nonviolent resistance. That's a classic. But here, okay, so in those cases we have the bronze rule. That's kind of a cross between all these rules, and and Confucius first stated this, best stated rule as, repay kindness with kindness, but evil with justice. So this is kind of like paying like with like, but if somebody acts real bad to you, you don't act unrestricted back to them. You go within, stay within a justice system, you know. Try and stay like eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. A lot of people criticize that, but it's really only an eye for an eye. I mean, it keeps escalation down so that things don't escalate out of control here. So here's the four rules here in this little quadrant box here, and how they're basically cited here. Like I said, I've already mentioned all of these, but the bronze rule, it seems to be the prevailing ethical standard in the world today. Like I said, the United States, you know, they cooperate with the allies, but if somebody's trying to get conflict or warlike, then you behave with justice. If it's pure evil, like some of the real dictators, like Pol Pot and those guys. I mean, you gotta pay with justice, or like certain genocides where the United Nations actually went in and worked as a world group to clean things up. So let's go. There's further variations of the bronze rule, and like I talk about the tragedy of the commons, where you want to keep resources abundant. Everybody has to cut down the over-harvesting and make a sacrifice for the long-term goal of being able to fish, far into the future, So let's scroll down here to, these applications that I think naturally emerged from this system, and I go pretty fast in here in the text, so this could be, and then I name my new system, it has to have a name, so I named it Power Play Politics. I know it sounds like a funny name, but it's kind of a cross between the power politics of the real authority figure and the power play, which denotes the follower, like in sports like soccer and hockey, where the followers are emphasizing their roles. So it's kind of a hybrid, and I decided that this is the first term I came up with. I might rename the system, maybe something not so outward like that, but and then, hey, we're down to the final conclusions. There's just a few pages here that I'm going to split off. Some of this I covered in the abstract about how the system will enable favoritism against any one religion, and the secular people have a platform, the behavioral platform, to talk about these virtues and values without getting religious, without invoking a supernatural source. But as we have seen, there's a higher unnameable realm that leaves open for a belief in religion and God, and it's possible that there's a top-down pattern where He's working through creation, through nature, through society to hopefully influence things and keep our civilization going. Because now more than ever, we're so interconnected that just you knock one block off and then knock another one here, and then I don't think things could ever collapse. But Murphy's Law, whatever can go wrong can. So forget the Korean Peninsula stabilized, maybe the Middle East stabilized, and I see a bright future. Don't get me wrong, I'm planning to live to be 110. Famous last words. Okay, let's scroll down here. Here's directions for further research, and like I say, this is all, just bringing it all together. I really kind of made my points here throughout the text, but I talk about that. So the economics, that's interesting some.
Would you like to read the economics on here?
Yeah. Okay. I think it's up one paragraph, maybe. Okay. No, let's go down a little bit. Okay, right here. Yeah, similar applications stand to the global economic marketplace. An amazing influence of technical proficiency and international cooperation across the board. This can lead to a high degree of fractionalization in diverse special interest groups each seeking to press their own global advantage. You see this in maybe upcoming trade wars here, tariffs and all that. This tends to marginalize the general public welfare. The entrepreneurs are just trying to make a sale, make a living here, cause gridlock in policy making and global progress. So, and this new system figures in here. It wasn't quite like I said on my website, worldpeace2.com. I show all the conflicting realms and everything, and that would maybe make more sense here right now. As far as I'm just speaking broadly here because I can't bring all these other terms in. There was no room. So let's kind of scroll down here, and this is the first top of page 205. I would like to propose this is the first grand unified synthesis of its kind. I know that's maybe grandiose, but when you look at the whole extent of everything, like I said, you got the virtue, the basic level of the virtues. Then you got the themes on top of that unify all those, and then you got the phantom and fantasy dialogues that all similarly correlate. I mean, it's hard to imagine that this could really be just an artifact of language artifact. And like I say, you can see the passion in me for the passion that I put in. Tens of thousands of hours of research and everything, and I think this is I've developed to the point where I feel that there are not any drawbacks anymore. I've made improvements over many decades, and I think this is really ready for prime time. And with the doctorate that potentially might be granted to me through the graciousness of the university, I mean, this is just a dream come true. And I want to thank all of you for all your feedback too.